Hey, what's up everybody? This is Sean Flynn and this is my PowerPoint presentation for my fitness education program. My client and I use the functional movement screening for our health and movement assessment. It's a screen that assesses the fundamental movement patterns of an individual. Research has shown that the FMS is a great indicator of potential injury based on the athlete and client score. There's a couple articles that I found that stated that an FMS score of 14 or less has been proven to be at higher risk of injury when training or competing. The two studies are shown right here. Kiesel, Pilski, and Voigt. They found that the functional movement screening combined score of 14 or less increased professional football players' probability of serious injury from 15% to 51%, which is pretty significant. And then in another study, Chorba et al. In 2010 found that a group of collegiate soccer players using the FMS who scored 14 or less increased their chances of injury fourfold, which again is quite a bit. So I think it's a good indicator of potential injury risk. With my client, when we did the FMS, we did all the tests, and the deep squat she scored a 2. She was not able to get her femur horizontal at the bottom of her squat, and she had a very slight, but upper torso lean. My concerns from this were that her hip mobility was not where it should be, as well as her core strength and posture was not up to par, which caused the slight torso lean. So the corrective exercises we did were hip mobility, and to do this every day before the warm-up started, she would get there 15 to 20 minutes early, and she would foam roll her hamstrings, quadriceps, glutes, as well as some lower back stretches. And then within the 8-week program, there were a series of squatting exercises, which along with the foam rolling helped to improve her hip mobility quite a bit. The main exercises focusing on her hip mobility were the pause squats, in which she had to hold the bottom position of a squat for 3 seconds before standing up. So the weight pressing down on her at the bottom of the squat and her holding that position, naturally she's going to go a little bit past what she would normally do. So this helps open up the hips and increases flexibility. For the hurdle step test, my client was not able to keep her knee and hip aligned when she was doing the movements. However, she was able to maintain no movement in her lumbar spine, and she kept the dowel parallel to the hurdle throughout the entire test. So her inability to keep her knee to hip alignment suggested to me that the client had undertrained hips, which could cause me concern when performing athletic movements, such as laterally moving, whether it be sprinting or jumping laterally. She is a volleyball player, so there's a lot of lateral movement involved. In order to correct these, the corrective exercises we used for this and to strengthen the hips, we were extremely focused on correcting her squatting form as well as her lunging form. Her knees would cave in when she would squat or when she would lunge, so we were really working on that and forcing the hips out, the knee out. And then the corrective exercises within the program to help this were stability-based exercises, so things such as kettlebell single leg RDLs, which is a counterbalance exercise, and then split jumps, which you're jumping off of one leg and you need balance and you need to keep good form. And then we also introduced her to kettlebells for the first time. So she did kettlebell swings, which will also strengthen the hips. The inline lunge test, she got a perfect 3. There were no concerns. There were no corrective exercises directly related to this test. The next one was her shoulder mobility test. She scored a 3 on the right side, but it was pretty concerning. She scored a 1 on the left side, and she wasn't, it was quite a drastic change. When she was testing her left side, she was about 3 fist lengths away from her right hand. And but she didn't feel any pain, and the shoulder mobility clearing test was passed. However, her lack of ability was a major concern, as many movements rely on shoulder mobility, and they could put the client at risk for an injury. So in order to help my client's shoulder mobility, she would do a series of resistance band stretches before each workout as part of her daily warm-up. And then within the program on Wednesdays, she was specifically programmed to exclusively work on her shoulder mobility with myofascial release using a lacrosse ball, and then resistance bands as well that same day. In order to strengthen the shoulders, there were a series of shoulder exercises. We did push presses, dumbbell lateral raises, dumbbell single arm incline press, and these were all paired with exercises that would strengthen the surrounding areas of the shoulder. So, tempo pull-ups, rear delt raises, and renegade rows, which will strengthen all the surrounding muscles of the shoulder and better help protect it. The next test was the active straight leg raise test. She scored a 2 for both her left and her right, and she had the same problem with both legs. She had pretty decent flexibility. However, her opposite leg, the one that was supposed to be extended throughout the entire motion, would keep lifting up off the ground. So she got a 2 there. There was no real major concern, but it was just something that we addressed in the program and we tried to fix. And in order to do so, we strengthened it, again, the foam rolling, and then we did exercises such as deadlifts, kettlebell single leg RDLs, hang power cleans, and barbell RDLs, which really give a good stretch and strengthen the hamstring at the same time. Next up is the trunk stability test, and she scored a 2 on this. She was not able to keep her body in one unit on the way down. Her spine would slightly sag down. And although it was nothing concerning, we knew we needed to work on her trunk a little bit more and her core work. And so in order to do this, with each workout, there was some kind of core and trunk workout. So it would be like weighted planks, 6-inch holds, plate sit-ups, side plank taps, hip-ups, hanging knee raises, and left and right side med ball throws. The rotary stability test, she was unable to perform this unilaterally, so we modified the test having my client use her opposite hand and leg diagonally, and once modified, the test was completed quite easily. There were no major concerns, but we just addressed it with core strength and some balance exercises. And those are listed right here. A lot of them are the same as before, a lot of the exercises are multifaceted. And so weighted plank, 6-inch holds, plate sit-ups, side plank taps, hip-ups, hanging knee raises, kettlebell single leg RDLs, and split jumps. And there are a couple more. As I met with my client, she told me that she wanted to gain strength and power. She would lift on her own and with real no guidance and kind of just freestyle it. And she thought that because of this, she wasn't getting stronger or any more athletic, and it was a detriment to her athletic abilities as a volleyball player. So with that said, I created a strength and power program for her using linear programming for my periodization style, which consists of increasing the weight lifted over the course of a macro cycle while reducing the weight lifted. There were also periods of my 8-week program that were undulating periodization, which works on endurance, hypertrophy, strength, power within a cycle. So a little mix of both, but it was mostly linear. Each exercise was selected not only in regards to my client's personal goals, but also to help support her deficiencies in relation to the FMS test. The exercise in the bold print were the primary focus of the day each day. Athletes should perform that exercises that are the most valuable to their goals and which require the fine motor coordination and maximal neuronal output while in a rested state, stated by Zatsiorsky and Kramer in 2006. And then by programming this way, they were hoping that it would eliminate premature fatigue. So the most important exercises in our program, my client and I's, was the first exercise prescribed after the warm-up each day. And then we worked with the bigger muscle groups first, and we targeted those earlier in the workouts, while the smaller muscle groups got the attention towards the end as we went. We went from bigger muscles all the way down to the smaller muscles at the very end. The exercise frequency for the program, elite athletes train 5 to 6 days per week, as stated by Zatsiorsky and Kramer. But given my client's background, she works 9 to 5, and she just wants to maintain her volleyball skills and kind of excel at it. I thought that 4 days would be efficient for her to obtain her goals, but still be able to work and do all the things that she wants to do. So with that said, we did 4 days of training per week. It was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesdays were her one active rest day and mobility day, in which she did her myofascial release for her shoulders, a bunch of mobility work, and then she would walk, jog, super low intensity, but for an hour. And that was her active rest. And then Saturdays and Sundays were 2 complete days of rest, where we just let her get ready for the next week. The intensity varied each day by using percentages of the athlete's 1 rep max. So my client did a 1 rep max for all the exercises before we started the program, and we used those to choose the intensity for each workout. It would also vary on the intensity would vary with each exercise, depending on the day and the week of the program, as well as the amount of sets and repetitions performed for the given exercise. And then the duration of the workouts usually was about an hour into 10 minutes. The only ones that took an hour and a half were in the beginning of the program. When my client had questions, I still had to thoroughly explain everything, and she was learning for the first time. As the weeks went on and she had less questions and she became better at each movement, the workouts significantly reduced in time. Exercise progression. Each week, the exercises from the week before progressively got heavy. Meanwhile, the volume would decrease. So for example, my client in week 1 was deadlifting 80% of her 1 rep max, but for 5 reps. And then in week 2, she performed the same exercise at 85% of her 1 rep max, but for only 4 repetitions, and then so on. And we just built up to get higher and higher into that 1 rep max. So for my exercise techniques, for my upper extremity compound movement, I picked a pause bench press, which was in my program. Under it is some basic instructions, basically for the bench press, lying supine with eyes directly under the bar, using a pronated grip that is a little bit wider than shoulder width. Once the bar is lifted from the rack position, position it over the chest with the elbows locked out. From this position, the client should lower the bar to an inch above his or her chest and hold this position for 3 seconds. After the 3 seconds, during the 3 seconds, the athlete should maintain the 5 points of contact on the bench throughout the entire movement. The client's wrists should be straight and in line with the elbow. And then from the bottom position, the athlete should then press the bar away from their chest and very slightly backwards and continue pressing until their elbows are fully extended. The lower back should never arch while doing this. And we did this for our video, which I have linked in here in a second. For the lower extremity compound movement, we did a pause back squat, so very similar to the bench press. You're doing a back squat and you're pausing for 3 seconds at the bottom. Okay, pronated grip, all the basic instructions for a basic back squat. The only difference being that you need to keep your core very tight at the bottom, because a lot of people's biggest problems is when they pause at the bottom. 1, they want to come up way too fast. They don't wait for the full 3 seconds. And then 2, they relax at the bottom and they let their air out. And when they do that, their lower back rounds. So it was a struggle trying to keep her to hold her breath and press out on her stomach to brace that core. For the exercise technique with corrections, the YouTube link is on this page right here. You guys can see me working with my client and correcting the technique on the pause bench press as well as the pause squats. For my faith integration, I picked, the first quote that I picked is one of my favorites. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I think this really relates to us in our profession. Every client you come across is going to struggle at some point. It's never easy for anyone, whether it be gaining muscle, gaining strength, they're not losing weight fast enough, whatever it may be. And this quote just speaks volumes on, everyone's going to struggle, but if you just put your faith in Christ, He gives you the strength to persevere. So I think that relates very nicely. Next up is 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, for God's temple is holy and you are the temple. Our bodies being God's temple, I feel like they should be respected and taken care of, and we should constantly be bettering ourselves and not taking it for granted. And I think we should preach this to our clients as well. God did a great thing for us, and we just can't take it for granted. And then last, this is actually my favorite quote in the Bible, is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the game goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I preach to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. This quote just has everything to do with self-discipline. We're not always going to be there for our clients 24/7, so I think instilling self-discipline in them is major. But also, you can't preach what you don't do. So self-discipline within ourselves is just as big as preaching it to our clients. That is all, and thank you very much for watching my video.